Chapter 18. Leverage. So, Henry had married a white girl, DJ thought to himself. He realized that in today's society that thought was considered racist, but it was honestly the first thing that went through his mind when he saw Henry's wife for the first time. Despite his many conversations with Henry at the diner, and despite the several jars of pickles he had consumed made by her hand, the fact that Henry's wife was white just never came up. Not that DJ cared one way or the other. He had just assumed this whole time that she was black only because Henry was black, or African American, or whatever terminology was considered socially acceptable at the time. But it did explain why Abby was of a lighter complexion. He could only imagine what Miss Jackson thought when her daughter came dragging in a wounded FBI agent, followed by a soaking wet, unshaven, scruffy-looking guy in hospital scrubs and a bandage around his head. For her part, Mary Jackson seemed to take it all in stride. She seemed convinced that her daughter had a perfectly good reason for all of this. At least that was the look she wore on her face when they came dragging in through the sliding glass door at the back of the house. Abby set about trying to explain what was going on to her mother, while DJ led Agent Foster over to the dining room table. It looked like a pretty sturdy table, so DJ commanded Brett to take off his jacket and climb up and lay down. That idea got some pushback by Brett. "I'm sure you may have seen your fair share of bullet wounds," Brett began, "but you're nothing more than a medic, and what I need is a doctor. Now give me back my phone." DJ shook his head. "You know, I thought FBI hired smarter people than you. So let me connect a few dots for you because you don't seem to be able to. Number one, this guy has his fingers in the FBI. Maybe not where you're from, but he does here in Colorado. Right now, those people are using their resources to try and find you, to try and find me." He pointed his finger at Abby talking to her mother in the room. "And to find her. If you set one foot in a hospital, they'll know about it a few minutes later. You know as well as I that hospitals are required by law to report all gunshot injuries. You want to do that, fine, but you're going to let me haul you far away from here so you don't accidentally get them killed. And right now, since those same guys that shot you are probably combing this entire area looking for us, that's not going to happen anytime soon." Brett was silent for a moment as he considered what DJ had said. Then, "Okay, you're probably right about that last part." DJ nodded. "So do you want to sit here bleeding all over their house and wait until we can get you clear, or do you want to let me fix you up?" Brett gingerly climbed up on the table. "Fine, but then you need to let me call my boss. He can bring in an army of agents and have the director temporarily suspend the entire management team in Denver, at least until we can get a handle on this." DJ nodded as he considered. "That sounds like a smarter move," DJ said with exasperation. "Now get your shirt off and pull your pants down." Calling over his shoulder, he said, "Ladies, whatever you do, don't call anyone, especially the cops. We don't know who we can trust just yet. And Miss Jackson, can I get some old towels? I'm afraid I'm about to mess up your kitchen." Mary gathered up the towels as requested and brought them in, while he laid out the supplies he brought with him from the clinic. When she set the towels down, he paused to take her hands and look into her eyes. "Your husband was a good man," he said. "This was my fault. If I would have not have chosen his parking lot to meet those guys that tried to rob me, he would still be alive. I simply cannot tell you how sorry I am." She looked up at him and said, "He liked you, you know." Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked exhausted from little sleep. "He said he could tell that you were wounded." She tapped her finger above his heart. "Right there. That you had probably lost someone close to you and was just trying to figure out how to make it through. I told him just last week to invite you over for Sunday dinner sometime. Said it was time I meet the guy who kept eating all of my pickles." He couldn't help but smile at that. He turned then and set to work on Brett. "So, Abby, your dad said you were going to school," he said, as he set about examining the wound closer. It looked like the bullet had expanded and stopped somewhere in the middle of Brett's torso. He had been shot by a suppressed round. If you really wanted a suppressor to do the best job it could to make a firearm as quiet as possible, then you needed to use slower rounds that did not break the sound barrier. The slower speed, combined with an expanding hollow point, had kept the round from punching a hole cleanly through the body. Abby replied, "Yeah, I've been going to school for computer engineering, but I'm not sure I can go any further, what with Dad no longer around. Someone will need to keep the diner going. Even if this hadn't happened, I'm not sure if I could have continued much further. The wound had stopped most of its bleeding, but he knew what he was about to do to it was going to kick that back into gear. He started cleaning the area around the wound and poured some of the disinfectant over the wound itself. Brett sucked wind from the sharp stinging when he did so. "Why did you leave?" DJ asked, turning to her. Abby paused and seemed unsure of how to proceed. Finally, she looked at her mother. I was accepted to MIT. Such good news being proclaimed by her daughter at such a bleak time after losing Henry the day before brought about an immediate change to Miss Jackson's demeanor. She brought both of her hands to her mouth. "Oh, Abby, Henry would be so proud of you." She wrapped her arms around her daughter in a happy embrace and began to cry for a whole new reason. "Wait a minute," DJ said. Why would you not choose to take that offer?" "Well, Dad was paying for my schooling. The cost to go to MIT is over 60 grand a year by the time you factor in room and board. That doesn't even consider the cost of books and miscellaneous expenses. I managed to get part of that covered by scholarship, but there's just no way we could afford the rest." "We'll find a way," her mother declared. "You have to go. Abby, you just have to." "I agree," DJ said. "I'll cover the rest." "What?" Abby looked at him stunned. "I'm loaded," DJ said simply. "What else do I have to spend my money on? Besides, your dad saved my life. It's the least I could do." "It would be my honor." He then turned back to Brett like he had said nothing out of the ordinary. Brett looked at the hole in his abdomen and asked DJ, "So what's the plan here?" DJ held up the thin surgical tongs he had commandeered from the clinic. "I'm going to follow the wound track with this. Grab the bullet and pull it out. Looks like it missed anything important. I don't smell any bowel from the wound, so the odds that it missed any intestine is pretty good. If it did, when we get you to a real doctor later, they can go in and stitch it all up. Oh, and then I'm going to staple the wound with this," he finished by holding up the medical stapler. Brett went white and grimaced as DJ talked. "That all sounds horrible." "Oh, yeah, it is," DJ said. "You're going to scream. If you're lucky, you'll pass out." Brett shot a venomous look at DJ. "Your bedside manner's terrible," Brett exclaimed. "Hey, what can I say? I don't like you. You're going to leave me chained to a bed defenseless back there." DJ then turned back to both Jackson women. "I don't suppose you have any prescription pain medicine lying around?" "Actually," said Abby, "Mom had hip surgery last year, and they gave her Oxycontin. There's still some left." DJ turned to Brett and said, "She really keeps helping you out. You're going to owe her big time after this. We'll give you some of that Oxy and wait 30 minutes before doing this. Maybe you won't pass out after all." The prescription bottle instructed Miss Jackson to take one pill every 4 hours. DJ gave him 4. In 30 minutes, Brett was pretty baked. DJ used the scalpel to cut a slot across the bullet wound and give the surgical tongs an easier entrance. Brett winced and groaned, but at least the pain was more tolerable for him. Abby helped DJ by handing him things and wiping away blood. She seemed totally unfazed with seeing the blood or watching him work. Most people witnessing something like this for the first time balked at what would be considered as gruesome. She didn't. He continued to be impressed by her. Henry had an awesome young lady for a daughter. While he worked, he talked to Brett to both try and keep his mind focused on something else and to learn as much as he could about Big Chuck and his operation. Brett, inebriated as he was, didn't see the need to hold anything back, as there wasn't really anything he had learned in his research on the way in from Dallas that would have been considered sensitive in nature. DJ learned that Big Chuck's real name was Charles Kaiser, and that the FBI had been investigating him for almost 2 decades. 6 times they had formally charged him for crimes, but his lawyers had no problem with getting him off well before the cases ever went to trial. He learned just how diverse and immersive his organization was as well, stretching across multiple states and involving both legal and illegal businesses. It explained how he was able to afford such a well-equipped private army. He also learned that Big Chuck had a total of 3 sons that had been given control over parts of his business. What it did not explain was exactly why Mason Kaiser had been involved in such a basic robbery attempt that should have been left to people lower in the pecking order. He voiced that confusion to Agent Foster. "I don't get that either," Brett said. "It's something we may never find out." "I also don't understand," DJ said, "how they can communicate with each other. and you guys can't intercept any of those conversations. I mean, you can't tell me that the FBI hasn't been able to get a subpoena to issue wiretaps." Brett nodded as he responded. "We have them now, but it's like no one ever talks on the phone. I could see some conversations being handled by burner phones, but the organization is too big to have everyone rotate through burn phones every few days. They must be using some other form of communication, but we've never been able to figure out what it is." Abby, who had been standing there the whole time and listening on, chimed in matter-of-factly, "Oh, that's easy." Both men looked at her, DJ pausing in his digging with the surgical tones. She continued, "You build an app. The app would have its own contacts list outside of the one built into the phone. Then it directly connects to whoever you want to speak through the internet. Kind of like using Skype to talk to a friend. The data is digitized and turned into packets of ones and zeros. The app could also encrypt the information, making it even more secure. It would be next to impossible to hack unless you were using the app yourself. Plus, if you ever needed to speak to someone you didn't have a contact for, someone outside the network, it would have its own dialing mechanism to make phone calls. The far end of the call could be hacked in on, but the sending end would be completely secure." Brett looked at her. "How sure of this are you?" She shrugged. 100%. I've already built one for a hacking club I belong to. Every hackers group is already using these types of apps. It's their way to make sure that the NSA isn't listening in on their conversations. They tend to be a paranoid bunch." "You're kidding me," Brett stated. "Nah, piece of cake. It's hacking 101. The trick in Big Chuck's case would be to make sure that the feds never got a hold of a phone with the app. So, you limit who has a copy of it. You know, your management types. Secondly, if any of them gets arrested, because it takes so long to actually process people when they get grabbed, you can remotely wipe the phone and delete the app. It's probably why none of your geeks at the FBI have ever discovered it. They delete it remotely before they ever get to break into the phone." DJ scratched his head. "How'd they get something like that through the App Store?" DJ asked. She laughed at him. "You can't find something like that in an app store. You have to hack the phone and install it directly. It violates the warranty on the phone, but I'm sure your everyday criminal empire isn't really concerned with that." Brett kept his eye on DJ probing his abdomen with the tongs. "In that case, we'll never be able to listen in on them," he said. "Oh, yes, we will," said DJ. He carefully removed the tongs and held up the bullet for all to see. "I took Mason's phone off of him in order to try and find out who he really was, after you guys got through with me. I didn't count on you guys trying to send me to prison, however. I have it stashed in the kitchen cabinets at my house." "First of all," Brett said, "are you kidding me? Did you really think to track down whoever was connected on your own? Secondly, how can that help us now? She just said they can wipe the phone remotely," Brett reminded him. "To answer your first question," DJ answered, "I absolutely have no faith in law enforcement's ability to keep me safe, especially not after these guys appear to be so well equipped. I mean, whoever was behind them was obviously powerful and well connected. Secondly, my house is off the grid. I have both solar and wind power for electricity." Brett shrugged. "So what? What does going green have to do with anything?" "Simple," DJ said. "There's an electrical cabinet and a bank of batteries in a room off the kitchen. You can't get a cell phone signal within 30 feet of that thing." DJ smiled at him. "So it should still have the app loaded on it," Brett concluded. "Wow," DJ replied with sarcasm. "You really do have the ability to see through the fog and put together the puzzle pieces. I'm impressed." DJ finished patching Brett up and then decided to change out his own bandage. Looking in the bathroom mirror, he could see that it was already starting to knit together and heal. Because it wasn't stitched, however, it was going to leave a nice scar and a perfect little V near his hairline above his right eye. Instead of wrapping his head again, he opted for a large adhesive patch that just covered the wound, the equivalent of a large Band-Aid. Mary had assembled some clothes together for both he and Brett. The clothes were donations that Mr. Jackson collected at the diner. His wife, in turn, sorted through and found the ones in the best condition, and then found people in need to give them to through their church. She had several black garbage bags full in the garage. She found jeans and tennis shoes for both of them, along with socks from her husband's collection. For shirts, she gave them a couple of brand new gray T-shirts that advertised her church's youth group. They were emblazoned with red reflective lettering that read, "Relentless Youth." After changing, DJ came out of the bathroom to see that Abby had changed out of her wet clothing as well. although this new outfit looked a lot like the last one. Apparently, she had a style of dress that she preferred, tight and athletic. With a fresh set of clothes provided and feeling pretty good thanks to being dosed up on Oxycontin, Brett decided to call his boss and rally the cavalry. He filled in his boss on all the details since arrival. He explained his belief that DJ was not a high-level contract killer, just a man that was a skilled shooter. He had been backed into a corner and decided to fight back. He told him of the corruption of the FBI at the Denver field office, explained how he was not sure how deep the corruption went and how it was impossible until a proper investigation had been conducted to trust anyone from that group. Any secretary, analyst, agent, anyone could be funneling information to Big Chuck. He explained how they even had a working theory on how the organization had been secretly communicating. His boss declared that this was going to require director-level involvement. He instructed Brett to talk to no one and stay put, that until he had conferred with the director and established a solid plan to move forward, staying hidden was the best course of action. In the meantime, he would assemble an advance team to fly in and rescue them. But that would take time to gather a group and fly in. They could maybe get there to extract them in roughly 4 hours at the soonest. Brett hung up with his boss and announced the plan. It was currently about 4:30 p.m. They could expect extraction back to Dallas no sooner than 8:30 p.m., but probably later. "Well, that means you'll be staying for dinner," exclaimed Miss Jackson. She set about assembling a meal for all of them, and that sounded awesome to DJ. DJ told Brett to rest and catch some sleep on the couch, and he would stand watch while Miss Jackson made dinner. There were bad guys still looking for them, so he stayed busy walking around and peeking out of windows. While he did, Abby followed him around, and they talked a bit more. "Explain to me this hacking club thing," he asked her. She laughed. "It's not nearly as rebellious as it sounds. We don't hack into governments and distribute their secrets all over the internet or anything like that. We just look for sites that look challenging and see if we can break in. We've never done anything once we break in. Well, not usually anyway." "Not usually?" DJ prodded. "Well, it could be possible that once, completely by accident, we may have caused a small blackout. But we fixed it. The lights were off for only maybe 20 minutes or so." DJ shook his head incredulously. "Where was this accidental blackout?" he asked her. "I can't pronounce it, really. It was a city in Iran." "What? Are you kidding?" She grinned at him. "Maybe." DJ snorted at her. Okay, you got me. That was pretty good. I almost believe you." "Well, hacking is what got me into MIT, though," she said. "Are you messing with me again?" "Nope. The dean of admissions has one of those really cool, expensive, all-electric cars. You know, the kind that's fast like a sports car, but it's really a 4-door electric sedan." "I've seen them," DJ responded. "Well, I made a video with me explaining how society would be much better served with me in school, getting a quality education, instead of roaming the world and getting into all kinds of trouble. Then I hacked her car and made it play the video on the screen built into the dashboard. Made it lock the doors and drive her to work while it played. Got me a 20% scholarship." She beamed with pride. "Wow, I'm not sure if I should be impressed or scared," he stated. "Both," she declared. "What about the fighting thing? Where did you learn to deliver a roundhouse kick like you did back at the clinic?" "Well, Dad told me a girl always has it harder in this world. A black girl has it even worse. Knowing how to defend myself was important for me to know how to do. So I've been involved in karate and kickboxing since I was 6. Lately, I've been training in Krav Maga." "Oh, wow, impressive." "Thanks," she said. About an hour after Brett had hung up with his boss, and before they could sit down to dinner, he got a text message that startled him awake. He had dozed off with his cell phone resting on his chest. It went off while DJ was standing behind the couch looking out of a window, so he bent over and looked in as well. It was a picture. Someone had sent Brett a photo of an older couple bound and gagged in a room with duct tape over their mouth. It came from an unknown number, but he recognized the couple easily. "What the?" Brett murmured. "Oh, crap," DJ stated. The phone buzzed again, and a second image popped up on the screen. Brett sat straight up over this one. Pain shot through his abdomen from his wound, and he grunted out loud. The picture was of an attractive brunette. She was also bound and gagged. She looked scared to death. There was a purple-colored bruise on her cheek. She had a black eye. She had obviously fought back. "No," said Brett meekly. A look of fear planted itself on his face. DJ didn't recognize this person, but he could guess who it was. Brett's wife. A third time the phone buzzed, and a satellite map image popped up with a red digital thumbtack indicating the center of a field somewhere. There was an address listed at the bottom. DJ sat next to him to get a better look at the screen now, wondering how Big Chuck could have kidnapped his in-laws and Brett's wife. The phone buzzed a fourth time, containing a set of instructions and an ultimatum if they were not followed. It was pretty clear. DJ was to arrive at that destination by a certain time. If he didn't, the people in the photos would die. So, this was how Charles Kaiser was going to beat him, he thought. Not in combat like a man, not with a bullet fired from a sniper somewhere. If you couldn't beat someone physically, you beat them psychologically. You find their weakness and apply pressure. Big Chuck had finally gotten smart about all of this. He was going to beat DJ by using leverage. He was going to make him simply lie down and give up his own life.